About it.
All right. All right. Well, welcome back. This is episode number 11, and we're doing Mel Brooks. So thank you, Max, coming once again. Coming off the Tommy Wiseau comedy train, diving into one of the comedy legends, Mel Brooks.
So it's so funny that you mentioned Tommy Wiseau like in conjunction to Mel Brooks, because first off, to preface this, there are a lot of Mel Brooks movies that I didn't see before like preparing for this podcast session. I hadn't seen The Producers, and I hadn't seen Blazing Saddles, and I still haven't seen like a big chunk of his movies after Spaceballs, like Robin Hood and like all those other ones. But I did manage to like rewatch Spaceballs as well. And I was sitting there watching it and I was thinking, this is so similar to Tommy Wiseau, but also so fucking different, because on one hand you have like, he has no idea how stupid his movie is, and Mel Brooks is the exact opposite of that. He has full like knowledge of how fucking idiotic and like stupid all of his characters look, and it's so great.
No, honestly, yeah, and it fits his personality. He's so like self-aware. Like his humor is very like like kind of meta. Like definitely with Spaceballs, but he's very self-aware. He knows what the fuck he's doing, and honestly, who doesn't love a Jew?
Exactly.
I can name a few people, but like, yeah.
Oh, that's so funny. Actually, is Mel Brooks actually Jewish?
Yeah, he's like full on like matzo balls. Like like if you listen to like any story he's got, he's just like, yeah, I gotta fucking get like some some knishes, like some matzo ball soup. Like I gotta take it all these like I'm blanking all the sandwiches he would bring like to the producers. Like I can't remember this. I'm blanking on the sandwich shop. It's like a really famous sandwich shop in California. But like it's a very Jewish sounding name. But there was an instance where he's a young director at the time for the producers, his first time directing, and he looked so young he couldn't get into the set of Paramount because like people didn't believe that he was a director. He didn't have any like ID with him or anything to kind of get him into the lot.
Oh shit.
Yeah,
dude, that's so funny. I feel like, wow. I mean, honestly, good for him. Do we know what age he was when he directed that?
I don't know. The movie came out, I think, in 68 or 69. And well, he was a World War II vet. So like he was 18 D-Day, so 44. So he was probably born like 1928, something maybe like 1926. So do the math.
Yeah,
maybe he was like.
So Casey and I actually looked this up. He's actually 95 now. So
fuck.
Yeah, you can basically do the math from there, I guess, if you really want.
Nah, I'm good. It's too late for that. Yeah, but yeah, dude, that's fuck, dude. Like honestly, of that era, I think he's like the last surviving one. If you think about it, like if you think of like the comedy legend story that time, like Jerry Lee Lewis, Carl Reiner, Don Rickles, like Buddy Hackett, like he's like the last like kind of surviving like comedy god during like from say like the 50s on like to like the 80s. Like he's the last of his generation.
That's so interesting though, because the reason that I ask like, oh, why did Paramount think he was so fucking young? But he was like 40 something when he directed
I guess so. I mean, he was also young looking. I guess he also looked young. He must have been like, I mean, like, he looks like a very chipper guy. I'm sure he looked great in his 30s.
Yeah, I mean, it's just funny because I'm thinking like, I mean, like I'm a young looking guy, right? Like, could you guess that I'm 24?
Well, I can guess you're half Jewish, right?
Fucking maybe. But it's just funny because like, I don't know, like I'm wondering if I'm gonna have that same issue of being like,
just don't, if you want to look older, just start smoking. If you don't, then like, just keep on the course.
Yeah. Well, everyone tells me that I'll look great in my 40s, and I'm like, you know what? I'm excited for that, because apparently film directors are like they pop off in their 40s and 50s. Nobody makes anything super notable in their 20s unless you're like
Yeah.
super.
Unless you're like, you have to be a wonderkin, like you got to be like Paul Thomas Anderson or Tarantino, like, or like Robert Rodriguez, like, you're kind of like this freak of nature.
Yeah, I was gonna say Robert Rodriguez. Actually, that would be a great topic maybe for next time, because I could talk about Robert Rodriguez.
Same. But yeah, it's another time. But kind of going back to Mel Brooks. So he's also like very personal to me in terms of like film itself. He was the first guy I ever kind of like, before I knew the word for it, what an auteur was. Like he was the first guy. Like I like recognized him like as an actor, but he's also the first one where I knew what a director and a writer was. Like he would do everything. He would be the writer, the star, and the director. And he was like the first guy that I ever put that together as. So one of the first big movies I ever watched, and I think it was like the first rated R movie I watched, was History of the World Part 1. I think I was 8 when I watched it. And honestly, I never knew what the Spanish Inquisition was until I was like in my late teens. And I'm like, I've been doing like a sing and dance number about a Holocaust all my life. I've been like singing a musical about like, like about like some people just like burning Jews, like, but I'm just like happy-go-lucky about it.
So it's just so funny. First off, can we go back to the Jewish thing for a second? The fact that Mel Brooks is Jewish makes like every Nazi joke I hear in his movies like 100,000 times funnier now.
You gotta see the producers, man. Like the producers, like his fucking like,
time for Hitler.
It's the best.
So good.
God. Like I'll go as far to say, like, and so many people have said it. I think even like Larry David has said it. It's probably like the greatest comedy premise ever in a film, is that these two guys like are just trying to put on a play for the like are trying to make a bomb just so they can like just so they can rake in all like the funding to make the movie to make the play, and just it's perfect. The perfect script. And like Gene Wilder, my fucking guy.
Absolutely, dude. I mean, I just love also the friendship that Mel Brooks and Gene Wilder had during their like careers together. I don't know if Mel Brooks is still doing stuff. I think he was. We looked it up as well. Basically, he like stopped his like directorial stuff after like the 90s and went more into like voice acting for the next like 15-ish years. But I don't know if he's still doing stuff. He might just be like chilling at this point. I mean, if I was 95, I would probably be like, on my way out the Hollywood door. I would be a little bit more like, okay, let's just
let's enjoy the sunset.
Yeah, a little bit.
But if you check out he's got a small like if you check out Comedians in Cars Getting Coffee, he's in it for a little bit with Carl Reiner, and I'm pretty sure that's what his day-to-day is like. He just like, well, before Carl Reiner passed away, like I think their day-to-day was just like they would just get together for like lunch and dinner and just like watch movies all day, and they would rewatch like stuff that they wrote, like just try to like just for like memories, like, oh, you remember like when we wrote Get Smart, like, oh, who came up with the idea for like the talk, like the telephone shoe, like they're just trying to like, or like or they just watch like whatever's new, like, but they're in their 80s, just like we had our careers, like, let's just like enjoy like each other's company and just enjoy our way out the door.
I love that. I love that like sentimental thing of just being like, like we can look back on a project and remember like fond memories of it. And I think that eventually you and I will really get to that point. I mean, we already have it with some of our works, but most of the time, whenever we rewatch our old shit, we're always like, we could have done this, we could have done that.
Yeah, but that's us just trying to like, we're also young and trying to like be better, and like and that's also like a craft thing, a technique thing that like it goes beyond like, because those guys were just masters of their craft at that time. Like they had been doing the craft for like a number of years, and that we're just starting off early, and like we're still starting off early. But
Oh yeah.
but yeah, it's just one of those things. Like I think once you're kind of like into it, you kind of really have a handle on things, then you can just focus on the content and just sit back and enjoy it. I think that's really the idea.
Right.
Even like someone like Roger Deakins, like he doesn't watch his own films, but when he has to kind of do deep dives, it's like, okay, it's not bad. Like I was able to actually enjoy the movie, like for what it was. So like I think it's just I think it's one of those things. You just have to kind of give it time.
Say again, sorry, I think you cut out.
Oh, okay. No, I think it's just one of those things you just have to give it time to like to kind of pass over.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I don't know. I think it's kind of cool if you can make something and really like pour your heart and soul out into it. And obviously like that, when it comes to filmmaking, that usually means like watching it like 100 billion fucking times. But if you can take a step back for like 10 years and then come back to it and watch it and you still enjoy it, like that's fantastic, you know?
Mm-hmm.
All right, so do we want to maybe get into some of his like specific movies? Because I've got a thing or two to say about Spaceballs first and foremost.
Yeah, we can go straight into Spaceballs. I might like dip into like some of those his other projects, but like again, I know his work very well. So like yeah, we'll go into so we'll go deep into Spaceballs. And I'm just curious, when did you first find out about Spaceballs? Like, what was your first like? Do you remember your first moment with it?
Oh, absolutely, I do. So first and foremost, this movie is actually one of my favorite movies of all time. And I think in my like list, you know, I don't have like a top 250 like you do maybe, but I know that it's in my top 10 of all time. And it comes out on top of most of the actual Star Wars movies. So, you know, if that's anything to go off of, right?
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so as a kid, I was maybe like 6, 7 at the time. So I was very young. This was even before I made my first like movie. And I was decently obsessed with Star Wars. I got a lot of like the Lego sets and shit. So as soon as I got the Lego sets, you know, I was obsessed with the franchise in general. So I watched all the movies, and then I saw that we had a DVD, or it wasn't a cassette, it was a DVD for Spaceballs. And it looked eerily similar to Star Wars. I wonder why, right? And I went to my dad, I was like, what's this one? I haven't seen this Star Wars movie yet. And my dad goes, oh, that's because it's not a Star Wars movie. It's making fun of the Star Wars movies. And as soon as 7-year-old me heard that it was making fun of the Star Wars movies, I boycotted that shit for like a year. I was like, no, you cannot make fun of this franchise. So it took me like an entire year before I actually watched it. I don't know why. I was 7. I didn't really understand.
Yeah, it's all right. You have amnesty, so.
Yeah, it's just, it was weird because I didn't understand the concept of a parody. I thought it was just going to be like a movie like 90 to Star Wars sucks and here's why it sucks. But no, it's like a different take, and it's like poking fun at all the like obvious things like the merchandising, because that's how George Lucas made his money. You know what I mean? Like it wasn't through the actual through the actual movies. He like signed away the rights to everything except the merchandise, which was super duper smart. Anyways, back to Spaceballs. I remember the first time that I saw it, it was on this like, I had this fucking like, it wasn't a laptop, but it was like one of these like DVD like open up things, and like
a portable like
exactly
sort of, player.
So so the screen was on top, and then the like little DVD thing was on the bottom, so you ejected it and it went, you know. And so I remember watching it in that for the first time, and I didn't get all of the references because I was like 7, 8, you know, however old I was when I first watched it. But I remember really enjoying it. I think I moved past the comedy and just enjoyed the story.
Yeah, like I think it's a very underrated story for like,
Yeah.
yeah, because it's very easy to kind of do like a parody, like what would eventually become like a scary movie sort of deal, like just like making those references. But like, the fact that there's like a compelling story with good characters while like and the humor just felt supplementary. I mean, like the humor was great, but the characters of like Lord Helmet and what like Lone Star and
Lone
Colonel
Star.
Sanders,
Yep.
yeah,
Barf.
President Scrooge.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I just have one more thing to add on to it. So looping back to the whole like Lego set, like Star Wars things, I love Lego growing up, right? Still do. Um, but after seeing Spaceballs, I became like obsessed with that a little bit more than Star Wars, as a matter of fact, at the time.
Mhm.
And I remember like going on, like my laptop and being like, okay, Lego Spaceball sets, and there's none. And I was so disappointed as a kid that there was never actual Lego Spaceball sets. So I took the liberty of making my own. I like took this Darth Vader helmet and I even like cut out the like I like shaved off the piece where like the head is, so I could put like some dude with glasses in there so I could make dark helmet. I was fucking obsessed.
I am
Anyway,
your father's, mother's, nephew's,
brothers,
cousin's former
former
roommate.
yeah.
Ah,
That's
Jesus.
the other thing is like I could quote that thing like it's nothing.
I honestly think like I might need a few like kind of kind of lob tosses to kind of get like the first like few words, but I think I'm on the same level. I think I can go line for line for that movie. Like,
Well,
and again,
it's funny because I think the first movie or one of the first movies that we ever quoted together, I don't remember where we were, but I remember it was from Spaceballs. It was the fourth wall break. All I had to do, man, was go,
what the hell am I looking at? When does this happen in the movie? Now. We're looking at now, sir. Everything is happening now. It's happening now. Go back to then. We just passed then. We're at now. Go back to then. Then now. What? We can't. What? We missed it. When? Just now. When will then be now?
now. Soon.
Soon. How soon? Yeah, just like again.
No, go past this part. In fact, never play this again.
But I think I had I didn't have Legos, but like I had a similar experience because I had watched History of the World Part 1, and my aunt who like introduced me to Mel Brooks was like, oh, you got to check this film out, and she gave me like a little VHS tape of Spaceballs and just be like, here, check this out. And I wore that tape out for like 2 years. It was just one of those movies that I would play my TV VHS tape player. And every night I would go to bed, I would just have that movie on rerun. Like it would play through the night. It would play through the night. I would just wake up in the middle of the night, just like watch like a scene, and I'm back to sleep, wake up, watch a scene, back to sleep. And it would just go on and on and on. And I did that for years.
Wow.
It's a great movie. Like it really is like one of my favorite movies. And I like granted, I know like there are in terms of craft and influence and culture, there are better movies, but in terms of like how close is this to my heart, like it goes beyond nostalgia, I think, because there is like a compelling like story within it. But even then, just like the jokes are just amazing. And I think it was one of those early films that like I understood what parody was and satire like at a young age when I watched it. Even though I didn't know the words for it at the time, at least I had like the idea of what it was.
Yeah, it's so interesting because I am the exact opposite. Like I said, I had no idea what a parody was. I had no fucking clue. And when I watched it, I still didn't get it. I just loved the story, and I thought that oh, this is like a parallel Star Wars universe. I was like so obsessed with the like, I saw like, with John Candy's character Barf, like the
Barf.
Yeah,
he's
the,
his
like,
own best friend, man.
Yeah. I knew that was a direct rip of Chewbacca, You know what I mean? Or not a direct rip, but you know what I mean? Like I knew that he was supposed to be Chewbacca. I think I got that Lone Star was supposed to be Han Solo.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously the Prince.
Yeah, like a combination of like Han Solo and like a composite Han Solo and Luke Skywalker.
Yeah, and it's like abundantly clear that Dark Helmet is Darth Vader and Dot Matrix is C3PO.
Yeah.
Like it's so hard to miss that, right? So like I think there was a piece of me that got it, but it was just I don't know, like I just didn't, like I liked the jokes for what they were. I also liked, because I was like 8 or 9 when I saw it, maybe even 7. There's some like mature ass jokes in there. First off, most of them flew right over my head, but the fact
President
that people
Scrooge
salute, right? But specifically, like the fact that like they said the word shit in the movie, and I was allowed to watch this. I felt so cool. I think that was the other thing is like Star Wars is so like family friendly for what it is in most parts. But Spaceballs is not. It's not
out of order. Fuck, even in the future, nothing works.
Yep. God, I love that fucking movie.
But like, one of my favorite jokes in that movie is "Comb the desert." Tell him to comb the desert. Do you hear me? Comb the desert.
Found anything yet? Nothing yet, sir. What about you guys?
We ain't found shit. Are we being too literal? Yeah. God.
No, you idiot. We're combing the deserts. We were told to comb the desert, so we're combing it. I love how he uses this is a small detail I just noticed on the last rewatch, but he uses the megaphone when talking to what's his face?
Colonel Sanders.
And then he goes, found anything yet? Oh God.
So obviously we love Spaceballs and we can quote it to no end. And I think it's just one of those movies, while like it didn't necessarily receive the same sort of acclaim as say like the producers or Blazing Saddles. I think it's still like a landmark film for like one of the comedy greats. Like, even though like it's not his quote unquote magnum opus, it's still like a highly worthy entry. And the fact that like it's got a pretty significant following 30 years after its release. So,
oh yeah, for sure. I mean, I know people who are unironically waiting for like a Spaceballs 2. And I think there was even supposed to be like a Spaceballs 3 movie, and it was like Spaceballs 3, the search for Spaceballs 2. I think
there is an animated series of Spaceballs
that I did see. I think that was Mel Brooks' last writing / directorial something that he did. The rest of it is mostly just acting mostly in the form of voice acting, which is cool. I kind of want to check that out now.
Yeah, but so kind of going back into some of his other films. So I mentioned History of the World Part 1, and super important film for me. The first time I ever heard Orson Welles, that was the first time I ever heard Orson Welles' voice, was the narration in that movie. And I know you haven't seen it, but just definitely a landmark. Again, like it'll never live up to say like your expectation. It's still a good movie, but like it's never gonna reach for you the heights of Spaceballs. But it's still very entertaining. And again, it's just like Mel Brooks being like the spoof master. It's essentially like his take on like biblical epics or like historical period films. And so they make fun of like the Roman Empire, the French Revolution, the Spanish Inquisition that I mentioned, but definitely one of the a worthy entry into his filmography. And it has all the goods that you want. Like it's got again great jokes, like great musical numbers, highly quotable. It's got all the goods. So definitely give it a watch. And I think that was the first rated R movie that I watched. It was either that or Terminator.
Okay. And so So it's literally called History of the World, and there's two
Part
parts.
one. No,
Right.
no, there's only one part. But so I like that you brought that up. There's potential. So Hulu did pick up the rights for our History of the World Part 2 recently.
Oh
Like
shit.
very recently. So like I think they are like there's a strong possibility that a History of the World Part 2 will be in production.
And do we think Mel Brooks is going to be
I think he might just get like an executive producer credit, or like just maybe something where like he was like based on the characters written, or like based on the story written by Mel Brooks. It's just I don't
Okay.
Again, like I think he's just enjoying his twilight years, and nothing wrong with it. I mean, he put in like 40, 50 years of a dynamite career. Just like, dude, enjoy retirement. Like, honestly, I would love your work, but like, you know, I know you want to sail off. And again, enjoy the sunset, man. Like,
I mean, by all means, yeah, I'm totally in that boat. But I have to say, I don't know if I'm going to do the exact same thing. I think as a director, I'm going to be directing not to the day I die, but at least to the day I get sick and get on my deathbed. And even then, I'll probably still be giving like directorial input and passing on the torch or some shit like that.
You're gonna go out like Kubrick.
That's what I'm thinking, is like I just want to I'm either going to go out mid-production or like just finishing a movie, which honestly would be like the most satisfying thing ever, is like finishing a movie and then dying and then not having to see how well it did.
Yeah, I mean, like it's like one final punchline, just being like,
Exactly.
Okay, gotcha.
Yep.
But another yes, so
I
like
was gonna ask, so I haven't seen it, History of the World, but is it kind of in the same vein as the Bill Wirtz video? Have you ever seen that on YouTube? It's like History of the Entire World, I guess. And it's
no,
like,
I haven't.
Oh damn. It's basically just like a huge, you know, joking story with like stick figures and like this dumb little animation. This is like, hi, you were here on this like little dirt rock. Here's the history of it, or some shit. And you know, they talk about all the different eras, and like, you know, they talk about, you know, like the world wars and, you know, all this shit basically.
Gotcha. I think you're I'm not quite sure, to be quite honest, but like because I hadn't seen the episode, but they don't go into like the creation of the earth, but they're they're more making fun of like the early parts of like, you know, man, like, you know, with like they have like a 2001 parody in it. They have like they make fun of like a biblical biblical stories. They make fun of like the Roman Empire. Like again, just watch it. I don't want to give spoilers, but again, it's a worthy, like if you're a fan of Mel Brooks, you gotta, it's definitely in one of his films. You gotta check it out.
Word, I will.
Yeah. So kind of jumping off that, again, I know it's another film you haven't seen, Blazing Saddles.
I actually did see it. I saw it last.
You have saw it. Okay.
Yeah, yeah. I wanted to make sure that I at least saw like the big four. So I've seen Blazing Saddles. I've seen Spaceballs, obviously, because we just talked about it. I've seen The Producers, actually both versions.
Gotcha.
Yeah, so funny story about that too. And I've seen obviously Young Frankenstein.
Yeah.
I think that was the first Mel Brooks movie I saw, actually, was Young Frankenstein.
Did you know the second Producers is directed by Susan Stroman, who's from Delaware?
I didn't know she was from Delaware, but I did look her up. So that's interesting. And also,
went to UD too.
Really? That's sick.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so it's her, Aubrey Plaza. I don't know if Aubrey Plaza went to UD.
She went to NYU.
Okay,
get that bitch out of here.
And John Rusk. John Rusk is M. Night Shyamalan's like right hand man.
Yeah. Do you know John Gallagher Jr.? He was in 10 Cloverfield Lane. If you've seen that, he was in The Newsroom. Hush, if you've heard of it.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, he's from Wilmington, Delaware. Yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, very close, tight-knit group of us.
Yeah. If you also
of course, and David Accord.
Yeah, of course. Like probably the most definitely most accoladed. So like and like nobody really knows who he is. And he's cool with that. Like, you know, It feels more
Some
of an
people don't like the spotlight. Some people don't need the
yeah,
spotlight.
honestly, that's cool. Like honestly, I don't like celebrity. Like I'm cool with that. Like just
I want to be like a B tier celebrity, like YouTube status, where some people will recognize me, but I can still kind of go about my daily activities with most people not recognizing me.
honestly, I just want to be able to go buy my groceries for the most part and not be bothered. I think that's like a big thing with me. Just like it's not the fact that like I'm not against people come up to me like, hi, I respect your work. I'm like, that's cool. But the fact that like if you're like a Michael Jackson level where you need to rent out a fucking grocery store and just have people pretend to be shoppers, you can pretend like it's shopping. I'm just like, nope, no. I can't do that. I need to I need my own life. I cannot do that.
So, all right. So going back to Blazing Saddles, what were you gonna start with here?
Oh, so like again, one of the most early films I watched, I was like 9, and I specifically remember watching this movie, and I rented it from Blockbuster. I rented this movie from Blockbuster, and I knew I'm 9 years old at the time, and I knew this movie was way too old for me and it was also the first time I ever heard the N-word. I didn't know what it meant. But it was just really? It was a little dicey, like, just getting a little indoctrinated with some racism at 9. But honestly, again, just the movie, I was just really entranced by the story. I was just like really into the story. And then even if I didn't get the jokes about Westerns per se, it was my first experience with Western movies. Like that was my first experience. Like I had never seen like True Grit or any Clint Eastwood movie or like John Wayne. But like, no, Mel Brooks' Blazing Saddles is my first Western genre film I've ever seen. And I think like, it's honestly like, I think a really good way, like kind of introducing myself to the genre, because of course, like years later, I go watch like spaghetti Westerns and shit like that too. But did you know that the theme song to Blazing Saddles, I'm blanking on the guy's name that like recorded it, but he thought Blazing Saddles was a serious Western because he had done like other Western movies, but he thought he was like playing like a serious like kind of like opening Western theme, but he didn't realize Blazing Saddles was a comedy.
Wow.
Yeah,
that's so funny. Wait, we're talking about like the opening theme with all the whips.
He wore a blaze. Yeah.
That's so good because as soon as that started fucking playing and you saw the like title come up and it's like filmed by Mel Brooks, like I knew like instantly that is like his like signature thing. Like Mel Brooks, that's his like form of over the top comedy, was the fucking whips in the background because they like just kept coming, like, and I was like, yep, that's Mel Brooks. I get it. Yep. God, so funny.
Yeah. And honestly, it's crazy to think like he had like monster hits like right in a row because it was like the producers, Young Frankenstein, and like Blazing Saddles with like a span of like 3 years. Like you're talking like monumental films in like the history of comedy.
Dude, honestly, good for him. Good for him. I love that.
And also, like, again, just even though I was too young for it, I was still able to appreciate a lot of the jokes. It's a stupid joke, but like I still laugh at it. The whole farting scene when they're like all eating beans. I'm like, yeah, like, or even like the character of like Slim Pickens is fantastic. Like, even though he's like very like saying like homophobic slur, but just like I was so into like Slim Pickens. And that's the first time I ever saw Slim Pickens. Again, never saw a Western before, but the fact that like he's playing into his character in a spoof, and he plays the same sort of characters in Western. So it's the perfect introduction into the Western genre. If you've never seen a Western before, Blazing Saddles is the perfect introduction into the genre because it takes in all the cliches and just makes fun of it. And it's so self-aware and like knows what it's going for. And even then, there's a ton of heart in it. It's so well written. And do you know that Richard Pryor was actually supposed to be the original lead? And he was also one of the writers.
Really? So wait, what happened?
So the studio, like Warner Brothers, thought he was like Richard Pryor. He's a little dicey. I mean, like, again, this is when he's starting to be a little more controversial. Like, he's like freebasing cocaine, like, and Yeah, and then like we want someone a little more like clean cut, so they got Cleavon Little, and I thought that was a better move. Like, I like even though like yeah, Richard Pryor is Richard Pryor, but I feel like you wanted someone clean cut for that role, and I feel like Richard Pryor just didn't quite. He wasn't that kind of character, and I feel like Cleavon Little like did a much better Sheriff Bart than I think Richard Pryor would have.
Yeah, for sure. Okay. Yeah, I guess that's fair.
Mm-hmm.
It's always interesting to learn something like that though, like where an actor was originally supposed to fulfill a role, but for some reason they didn't.
Mm-hmm.
And like hearing the reason too. Because like I'm wondering like how often is that gonna happen for for like future movies that I'm a part of,
Yeah. I mean, but like it's but like I would just say like that's one of the times where like I felt the studio was right. Like the studio feedback for that idea was right.
Yeah, I mean, usually studios do actually make good calls when it comes to like recasting, because if a movie is successful and especially if a role is memorable, I can't imagine any other actor doing it. Like even if they're like absolutely fantastic comedy wizard, like never misses a beat. I'm like, I just can't see you in this role, man, because it's already done. Like don't ruin it. You know what I mean?
But like but kind of going more into Blazing Saddles, just like again, even like some of the jokes, like the references makes you want to go find out what the references were from, because even like the Looney Tunes reference with Mongo, like okay, like yeah, so like you like I was one of the few references that I got in the movie, but I was just super into like trying to like figure out what all this shit mean. And I remember like when I first watched it, like I didn't get the ending. I'm like, wait, they're watching the movie now? Like I was so lost because I'm like, wait, like because I didn't quite get the ending, because they just like they ride off into the sunset with their horses, then they get off them to go into a car and they go off into the sunset. I didn't quite get that.
Oh my god. Okay, so I have to just say, has been like so good at fourth wall breaks. My favorite of all time will probably always be the Spaceballs one, but this one was really good too. And it's so interesting because you and I come from like different sides of like watching it at completely different ages, because I literally just saw it yesterday for the first time and you saw it when you were like 9. So obviously I completely got the ending, and it was obviously very Mel Brooksy. I was like very on board with it. But it's funny because I watched it yesterday with Casey, and the second that like they're like fighting in the fake town, and then it like pans over and you kind of see the studio lot, and then Casey
then you have Dom DeLuise.
yeah. So essentially in that wide shot where it's like panning over and you see like the studio set, she was like, like, oh, what's up with these buildings over here? And then the stream paused, and so we had like the the buffering circle in the middle, and she goes, are those traffic cones? And I was like, oh shit, that's probably in there by mistake. And then we saw like a full-on car coming into the lot, and I was like, oh no, that's a studio lot. This is Mel Brooks breaking the fourth wall. So
yeah, and then I
found out.
I used to do that dance too afterwards, like with with the whole gay but I used like honestly anything Mel Brooks sing and dance, I'm like, I'm in, like I'll just mimic it.
Dude, I wanted him to like write a fucking musical, kind of like Book of Mormon. Like I wanted him to write
the producers. That's what it is. Like that, like the produced, like not the like. Of course, like he didn't well, I guess he did essentially write the lyrics to the producer's theater version, but that was essentially his kind of Book of Mormon. But the original producers is a much more much more film. It's much more of a direct narrative, but with the exception, of course, like the big Hitler number, the musical was, but like the theater adaptation of the producers is essentially his Book of Mormon, or what Book of Mormon would become.
Sorry, you cut out. What'd you say?
Okay, no, I'm just explaining that no, the producers is essentially like his his theater musical, like ultimately, okay, this is just gonna be a pure musical, like that,
Right.
like that theater adaptation. This it's essentially what Book of Mormon would eventually become.
Yeah, and honestly, like
Mhm.
that's fine. I actually forgot that the producers was adapted for the stage.
Mhm.
But yeah, I feel like that's a decent segue into the producers.
Mhm.
So I watched that a few days ago for the first time, both versions. I accidentally saw the 2005 one first,
Mhm.
which is very interesting. I meant to see the older one because I specifically like, clicked on one of those for like streaming, and it played the wrong one and I had no idea.
Ah.
And then I was like, is that Uma Thurman? Interesting. And then I like
Mhm.
IMDb'd the whole like cast, and that's when I found out. I was like, Gene Wilder. That's not Gene Wilder. Like, what? What's going on here? So, that's kind of when I found out I was watching the wrong version. So I finished that one, and then I was like, okay, now let me watch the original.
Mhm.
I loved the musical version a lot. I
Mhm.
thought, yeah, I thought that the numbers were fantastic. Did Mel Brooks write all of them? I know he wrote Springtime for Hitler, but
I think for the theater one, he was actually highly involved in writing the lyrics. I think that was like one of his last, like, if not his last major project. And then like he like basically like and just basically did small roles after that, like in whenever he did. But I think that was like his last big hurrah. But like,
okay.
but like honestly, like that, I felt like I want to see that musical live because I feel like that's the way to experience it. But I've seen the original movie, and but like I got super lucky with seeing like waiting for the original movie because I actually saw it in theaters during its 50th
Shit.
anniversary. So I got really lucky that I like, even though I'm a big Mel Brooks fan, I waited for that movie and I just happened to like, okay, it's in theaters now. Like, let me see it. Like, because this is probably I'm not gonna find a better time to see it. And it's again like the opening I love with Zero Mostel trying to sleep with the old woman, and then like Gene Wilder just like his sheepish look. But
Yep.
again, like it's definitely in the 60s way of pacing, but it's just still such like an engaging movie. And like I was still into it, like from beginning to end. And honestly, I loved like, even though he wasn't in the musical version of it, but like LSD, I thought was one of like the very awesome characters in the original producers. The guy that played Hitler in the in
Oh, yeah,
yeah,
yeah, yeah, yeah,
yeah. But
yeah.
like mhm.
No, go ahead.
But I know, but like I watched all the behind the scenes of that movie. Like, did you know that Peter Sellers was instrumental in getting that movie a wide release?
Really?
He apparent. So this is the story. So like the producers got released and there was like no marketing for it. It was just like one of those like films that like we just kind of made it. It's not what we expected. So like we're just gonna let it die and like like show it to somebody else. Well, the story goes is that like Peter Sellers, he's on the set of I could think Warner Brothers making some movie, and they're having like a weekly movie night with like a bunch of other filmmakers and like cast, and they just like and they watch like a movie every week. And um one of the movies they were supposed to watch just didn't get ordered, and like Peter Sellers had a freak out. Like he's just like, what the fuck, where the hell is this movie? Like this, like we picked this movie, where is it? But like during this freak out, like this projection is just like, well, sorry, I don't have that movie, but like I've got this other movie. The producers, I'm not supposed to show it, but like who cares? I mean, I think it's just sitting around here. They play it, and everyone's on the floor laughing. And Peter Sellers, the very next day, took out like a 2-page ad in newspapers like across the U.S. saying that like this is one of the best comedy movies of the year. Like you have to see it. And it was instrumental about like getting it a wider release, and then just it stayed in theaters for a year after that.
For a year. Holy
For a
shit.
year. Mm-hmm. And
Wow.
also, Dustin Hoffman was the original like casting choice for the. Why am I blanking on the German guy, the German Nazi guy? I'm blanking
He's
on
gonna
his
play the
name.
German Nazi guy? I thought he was
Yeah,
gonna play. Fucking Leo. I thought he was like he
No,
would
no, no,
have
no.
Leo.
Gene Wilder was the first choice for Leo, but like no, Dustin Hoffman, he was supposed to be like
100%.
Hans Liebken, like or Liebken. He was the first
Liebkin.
choice. Yeah, but they had to recast it because crazy enough, Dustin Hoffman did The Graduate with Mel Brooks' wife, Anne Bancroft.
Oh my
So,
God.
yeah, so
That's so funny, actually.
small world of Hollywood, man.
So yeah, I mean, 100% Gene Wilder was fantastic for that role. But I do think Dustin Hoffman would have been a decent Leo.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
I could definitely see that. Like I could if there were number two, I could see Dustin Hoffman being Leo.
yeah.
But again, like I think like I feel like just like Gene Wilder, like I feel like he brings more heart to it than I think
Mm.
Dustin Hoffman would, because I feel like yes, Dustin Hoffman can be an underdog. I feel like he just doesn't have the same heart as like, or like, like
I see
as
what
like Gene Wilder, or like good soul, like having like that good soul vibe. That's
I think it worked out for the better for sure. Yeah, because his like
agreed.
I mean, watching The Graduate is fantastic too. I saw it in not film school, but a film class, and I loved it.
Mhm.
What was I gonna say though? I had one more thing to say about that. Oh, fucking the 2005 version. Franz Liebkin is played by fucking Will Ferrell.
Yeah.
Like that was weird to me. Like that should have been my first clue that there was something wrong with the version I was watching.
Yeah.
Because there's no way that Will Ferrell would have done something in 67, right? Like
Mhm.
I don't know, how old is Will Ferrell? Like I feel like he
He's
was
in his
like
50s now, but like during
yeah,
that movie, he was probably in his late 30s, early 40s.
yeah, like it just doesn't make any sense. Like that obviously came out like in the 2000s. I don't know. I can't remember when Elf came out, but I think that this
2004. So like right
2004.
before the producers. Yeah.
Wow. Okay, it's so interesting to me because like seeing him play a fucking Nazi, I was like, wait, what is this? Yeah, and then obviously like Uma Thurman, like that was interesting.
Mhm.
And then who else was in the remake? Uh,
Nathan Lane, I know is it, but
yeah,
like that he's the other he's the other lead.
yeah,
Matthew Broderick.
Matthew Broderick and Nathan Lane. Yeah, is is Nathan Lane the one that played Max?
I have Max Bialystock.
Yeah, okay, that makes sense. And it's so interesting because I was watching it and I remember thinking like that's the voice of Timon from The Lion King
Mhm.
because he has the same like I don't know, like he pronounces vowels the exact same way, whether he's like regular acting or voice acting. So
Mhm.
like, that's kind of usually when you can tell, and it just like throws me for a huge loop, especially because
Mhm.
The Lion King, like everybody saw it for the first time when they were like 4 or 5.
Mhm.
So crazy shit.
Yeah. Speaking of which, well, not really talking about the Lion King, but like going back to the producers, have you ever seen the Curb Your Enthusiasm season where they're talking about the producers? Did you ever see? Have you ever seen Curb?
I have not seen an episode of Curb, but I am deeply entrenched in enough of the meme community to know that like the fucking theme song is like a huge
Yeah.
meme at this point.
Yeah.
Anyways,
Yeah, so Curb is great. Like, but the one of the go-to Curb sort of seasons, they have they have an arc in this season, and it's where Larry David gets casted in the producers, like as Max Bialystock, and like David Schwimmer is his opposite, the Matthew Broderick character, Leo
Mhm.
Bloom. So, and then like, and Mel Brooks makes an appearance. Like, there's a twist at the end of why he casted Larry David, but like I really think you should watch it. Like again, they're 30-minute episodes. It's like 10 episodes. Like it's a hilarious fucking season. But yeah, you just see Larry David just trying to like, be Max Bialystock. And then like, but yeah, great season. And again, like Mel Brooks, like in one of his smaller roles after his film career. So like,
Yeah, I mean, I feel like I just need to see Curb in general because just
yeah.
like I mean, Larry David, are you kidding me? Like you know, and like I know that, you know, like my dad's a huge fan of Curb, so I have to kind of like, you know, I feel like if I'm gonna understand comedy, that's like a huge go-to, you know.
Yeah, like I love Curb. Like I can't. I haven't started watching the new. I think the new season is out now, and I haven't watched it. But I've seen like seasons 1 to 10. So or
Sweet.
one. Yeah, but it's a great show. Great show.
Um, and so I did just look at the time, so I know that we're kind of like we're running a little thin.
Okay,
Just
so approach on the hour.
but
Mhm.
I did want to talk about Young Frankenstein really quickly because that's the other
Gotcha.
big one that I did see as a kid.
It's
Um,
pronounced Frankenstein.
yeah. So it's so funny because I saw Young Frankenstein, any other Frankenstein media. I knew a little bit about, you know, like him creating the monster and whatever, but this was my introduction to Frankenstein as a concept. So, you know, when they were doing that whole like fun where and he goes like, "Oh, you know, it's pronounced Funkenstein," and then it's like, "Oh, so your name is Igor," and he's like, "No, it's pronounced Igor." I was like, "Oh, okay." Like I didn't get the joke. I was just like, "Oh, okay. So his name is Igor. Got it." So for the longest time, for any Frankenstein media, I was like, "Oh, and his sidekick Igor." So
Yeah,
yeah,
but
it's
Kenny
just
Mo.
interesting.
Yeah.
What?
Oh no, no. Sorry. Actually, I was gonna say the actor's name, but I think I just said the wrong actor's name. I was gonna say Kenny Mars, but I'm like, no, that's not right. That's the guy that played Franz Liebig. I'm blanking on the other guy's name, but the guy that played
You
Igor.
can look it up.
Yeah, like he was also in a silent movie. If you ever see that.
Yes, yes, yes. I did look up the cast for that. I didn't see it. Um, but yeah, like I just, oh God, it's interesting. Um, yeah, and then again, another Gene Wilder classic. Actually, I think this was I think I saw this after seeing Willy Wonka, the original with him. So I was like that was kind of my, you know, uh not magnum opus, but that was like the first time that I had seen an actor in like two wildly popular movies like back to back and being like, that's the same guy, you know. Baffled me that actors could play more than one role and be in more than one movie.
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah,
but
but
yeah,
I.
this
Mhm.
was like my introduction to the Frankenstein, you know, story in the Frankenstein media. So, you know, that yeah, I should let you talk, but I did want to say one more thing about just like Mel Brooks and parodies in general. But
Yeah, like I do like even though the like Young Frankenstein is great, I feel like it's also the one I've probably watched like the least, to be quite honest. But
fair enough.
but I feel like that compels me to go back and watch it. But I just but it's the one that I have like well, like again, like I'm not doubting it's not a great movie, but again, like it just doesn't have that same place in my heart as say like Blazing Saddles or like or History of the World or Spaceballs. But another film of his that I really like, I kind of looked over is High Anxiety. If you've ever heard of it.
I have heard of it. I looked up sort of like all the movies that he did. So
Mhm.
I know most of them by name. I just don't know anything else about them.
Yeah. So again, another really good movie, but it's his take on spoofing Alfred Hitchcock films.
Ooh,
Yeah,
okay.
so if you, yeah, so like so like High Anxieties is kind of like the title is supposed to be like a spoof of like Vertigo, and then like yeah, they have like jokes that like that kind of make fun of the birds, Psycho, Rear Window, North by Northwest. There's a I think there's a rope reference, like but yeah, it makes fun of all like the Alfred Hitchcock classics. I think Strangers on a Train was like another one, but yeah, just like one of it like I think it should be up there as like his like if you're gonna say like okay his top three of course are like the producers, Blazing Saddles, Young Frankenstein. You're gonna say there's the easy three. The like of course like Spaceballs in terms of cultural impact will be up there.
Mhm.
If you had to kind of give like a little bit more an objective, not like my personal top five, but The other one would have to be like High Anxiety with like History of the World in terms of quality and like terms of like how it ranks in his filmography.
It's so funny that he named it High Anxiety because now that you say that it's based on Hitchcock movies, it makes so much fucking sense. Like I
Mhm.
haven't seen it and I already can tell. Like I know exactly what it's about.
Yeah, but it's a hell of a good movie, dude. Like, just again, like, just give it a watch. It's super fun, and I think it's good fun though if you're all well. I think if you're interested in getting into Hitchcock, I think it's a good window to get people interested. But
Okay.
B, if you know Hitchcock, it's a fun way to kind of see where all the references are, or like, it's a good game.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, I'll definitely have to check it out. I'm definitely not done with Mel Brooks. Like there's like I haven't seen like half of his movies that he directed,
Yeah,
so I have to
yeah,
get back on.
yeah, exactly. To be or not to be, he's got a Hitler rap. Like,
Oh my god.
yeah, say Kyle.
Dude, so good. So good. I love that he's Jewish and he's like making all these Nazi jokes. Like good for him, honestly.
Mhm. Also, a little fun fact about like the producers. He was fine. Like there was one time where he had like they were willing to say yes to the movie, but the exception is that uh, they couldn't say springtime for Hitler. They had to say we'll do springtime for Mussolini, and
What?
and he was so adamant on saying like no, it's got to be Hitler. And
Yeah, it's gotta be Hitler.
and
Mussolini's
like
too many syllables, first off.
Yeah, and like this is a quote that like that's stuck in my head. Mel Brooks said like if you're going to go up to the bell, ring it. So like
Yeah,
so
really.
so I think like he said that well with like going for Hitler.
Right.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, so going back into the last thing that I wanted to say, um, I think it's really I don't want to say the word interesting because I've said that so many fucking times, but it's very intriguing that Mel Brooks has essentially made a directorial, experience based on other people's work. Not, not doing exactly other people's work, but poking fun at literally other people's work. I think that's so cool. Um, and I don't know if it like raises a question necessarily, but it does kind of raise a few eyebrows when you think about people from like our generation that haven't necessarily seen the sources of the movies that they're based on before seeing the actual movies. So, like I said, like with Young Frankenstein, and I mean Spaceballs is a little different because I saw all the Star Wars movies before that, but like I haven't seen a decent chunk of the westerns that Blazing Saddles is based on. I could still get some of the like tropes and shit here and there, but it's interesting because you know like audiences back then got the jokes for what they were, but us watching these now are very, we're in a different hemisphere basically, you know what I mean?
Mhm.
So, like I just kind of wanted to hear your thoughts about that, like when, not to get like super philosophical, but when does a parody become not the source material, but like when does the parody sort of start to stand on its own, and what can we actually learn from that in terms of a filmmaking perspective?
That is a good question, and I think what's also important about what Mel Brooks did is that he like was still able to create original characters. I think that was super important.
Oh
And
yeah.
the other idea is that he understood the genre. Like with Blazing Saddles, like he understood what the genre was. With like History of the World, he understood the genre. Like Spaceballs, he knew what Star Wars was. Like I think it's like understating the tropes and like you could even say the cliches of the genre, and then you can begin to make fun of that. You can go to that, but I think it's like trying to make sure like you aside from tropes and genre, like I think the most important is having original characters and a compelling story. I like it sounds like it's simple, not easy, but I'm just trying to think of like, because it's the idea like he was never like a he was never into like being a knockoff. It's just like, oh, it's like a knockoff of like this. Like, no, I think the idea is he was still able to create like original characters, but he still played with genre. I think it's the same idea when you see like someone Edgar Wright, who
Hmm.
like with Shaun of the Dead, it's okay, we're making fun of the zombie genre. Like, and I
Right.
have respect for the genre, but we're creating a completely original story with original characters. We're just kind of making fun of the genre that it's a part of. And then same with Hot Fuzz, we're making fun of the police genre of films.
Right.
Like,
Yep.
so I think that's like, I think it's completely okay to like go into like parody, but I think but you just can't have references for references. And I think that's where like a scary movie thing does. It was more where like they were just trying to fit in references into like, what was ultimately not a very original story, because they basically just like copy pasted story and just kind of kind of like plastered in some like kind of collaged in some other references, if that makes
Yeah.
sense.
And not to hijack the podcast, because I know we want to keep
No,
it based on like Mel
go
Brooks, but
go for it.
the fact that you brought up scary movie, I think a good parallel to that is Scream, which I also saw for the first time this year,
Mhm.
during the Halloween season. And I have to say, like, that stands on its own because, again, like you said, original story and original characters, but it does poke fun at the horror genre, you know?
Mhm.
So I
Like, and
just, it's a
mhm.
good parallel. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, like, and no, that's exactly what I'm going for. It just, yeah, you're like, you don't want to just copy paste the story from that genre. What like I think is interesting about something like Shaun of the Dead, or like is just it took a rom-com story into genre. And like you don't want to like, you want to show the tropes and the cliches of that genre, but create a different story within it. Like you can
Mhm.
have like your characters either acknowledging those tropes or playing into the tropes, or denying the tropes.
Right.
So I
So
think, yeah.
yeah, and relating that back to Mel Brooks, like you said, yeah, original story, original characters, and kind of that story yeah, that's sort of the baseline. That's the what is it? If it's a building, it's the foundation for everything else on top. Like in the tropes and the references and the jokes, like all of that is like the building itself. But if you don't have the underlying structure and the foundation of like a good story and good characters, then people are going to pay attention for 10 minutes tops. You know what I mean? Like that's kind of
Mhm.
when it all falls apart. So that's a good takeaway, is like, and relating it back to like movies in general, like I always say something like, you come for the premise and you stay for the story and the
Mhm.
characters, right?
Exactly. That's a good way to think about it.
Yeah, like the fact that it's like, oh, this is a parody on the Western genre. That's what gets butts in seats. But the reason that they stay is because the story is so entrenching. So,
Mhm.
story, god damn it.
Yeah. God. All right. I think that's a good way to end it. Like, we'll get in our cars and drive off.
Yeah.
All right. But thanks, man. Again, like always love talking Mel Brooks. And again, like probably like one of my all-time, like I had this conversation myself. Like, I don't know if I'll ever be starstruck in my life, but if I were to, I think Mel Brooks would be one of those few that I'm like, oh my God. But honestly, I know I'll never meet him in my life. He'll be long gone forever, if I were to ever have the opportunity to. But like that
I have
motherfucker. Yeah.
I have to, sorry, I have to throw this in because I know that we talked about this last week, but we did talk about The Room. Kind of sad because I wish that this had happened beforehand. But speaking of being starstruck, I met Greg Sestero.
No shit.
Yeah. So I've met Tommy and Greg now, not in the same instance, but yeah, Greg is very chill. He's like one of the most chill celebrities that I've ever seen in my life. Like he's like super humble and all that, but he, like, his emotions are very like reserved. It's
Yeah.
kind of like, you know.
I'm sorry, dude. I got disconnected.
Hello? Can you hear me?
Sorry. I don't know what's going on now.
All right, well, I can hear you. Can you hear me? Hello? Can you hear me, Joey?
Okay, I can hear you now. Sorry.
Okay, there we go.
My internet just crapped out on me. So I'm like,
Nice. Well, rest in peace. Right as we were finishing up the podcast too. Yeah, I just wanted to kind of throw that in that as a little like, nod to the last episode is I met Greg Sestero. He's like a super awesome guy, super chill. I have like a bunch of signed shit from him now. I got my Disaster Artist copy signed and all this shit. So
yeah, and to be honest, like reading the Disaster Artist, he honestly is just like, seems like a pretty like, okay, I know like, who I am, what I've done, like, I'm aware of my place.
Yeah, and you know what? Good for him. And he's still making shit. He made a horror film over the pandemic, which I'm very excited to check out. I don't know if it's in theaters or on streaming yet, but I think it like he played a trailer for it, so I'm very excited. And yeah, it's so funny. I got to talk to him briefly about like his job on The Room and like all this stuff like that, and he openly made it clear to me. He's like, yeah, I'm much more proud of writing this book than I am starring in this movie. I just, and I'm like, you know what? That's super understandable. A little surprising, but very understandable.
Yeah. Like, I mean, like, I think it's just because I think it was just one of those things. He like, again, actual technique, like legitimate passion for the project. I think again, like The Room, you're just, okay, let's just get this over with because I know this is not going to be great, but let's just get this over. But like the Disaster Artist, I can see him kind of as he's like writing it with I don't know the co-author's name, but as he's writing it with him, I could see the passion like for him that was coming off on the page. So I think it makes sense.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So
yeah. All right, now we can end it. Yeah, sorry about that.
Sounds good. No, all good, man. All good. Yeah. But always appreciate it, man. Thanks. Take it easy today. Again, let me know if you got any projects coming up, dude. We're totally down to chill and talk about it.
Hell yeah, man. All right. Have a good night.
All right. Thanks, you too, man. Enjoy the day. Cheers.
Thanks.